Hi guys, it's Mrs. Atkinson. Welcome back. Today is Wednesday, April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day to all of you out there. Today's math lesson should not be that hard. April Fool's is really, really hard, so you better pay close attention. There are no guided notes that go along with today's lesson. So I'm going to be using a workbook page. So if you could please grab your math workbook if you have it at home and pause this video and open up to page 637 or tear it out. That is what we're going to be using today. And then we're going to do a guided drawing to draw our own number line. So you'll also need a plain piece of paper and something to write with. If you'd like to use markers for different colors, that would be great too. So pause, go get what you need, and then come on back. So today's lesson is 12-2, which is fractions and decimals on the number line. And we've talked a lot about number lines in fourth grade, but most of it has been to do with fractions and not decimals. So I just wanted to remind you here in red that the first thing that we always want to do when we notice a number line is to look at our starting and ending points. In this case, we have a 0 to start and a 1 at the end. So this is showing the interval between 0 and 1. So less than 1, less than a whole. The next thing that I taught you to do is to count your leaps. We need to know how many sections is this number line broken up into so that we know what to label our number line with. So I counted my leaps with that red marker, and I counted that there were 10 sections. So now if we were doing fractions, I could label them 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, all the way up to 10/10. And I know that 10/10 equals 1 whole. So I know that I labeled my number line correctly. Now, just as we can label a number line with fractions, we can also do that with decimals. And this is how it looks, right? When we're labeling it with decimals as well. So that's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and then 10/10, which would equal the whole. All right, so there are 10 sections between each whole number, right? We know that. That means that each section is 1/10 or 0.1. I can also call that 1/10. And we can count the sections to determine the decimal for the point on the number line. So we notice that there's a point here. So this is 7/10. And I can show that either as a decimal or I can show that as a fraction. Now, the cool thing about number lines is that we can also, if we were to take just one tiny section of this number line, any of them, like let's say the point between 1/10 and 2/10, and if I zoom in really, really close, you're going to see that there is a little space there. And if we wanted to, we could actually divide this tiny little section up into 10 different sections. I'm going to just try it, but it's going to be sloppy. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. And so you'd have 10 tiny little sections. Now, if I did that for every single little space on this number line, I would actually have 100 little spaces or sections on this entire number line because 10 times 10 would be 100. So that's what they're showing you here. They make this pretty cool like zoom in feature or this shaded region. It's hard to tell sometimes, but they're kind of trying to showcase this tiny little section and then they zoom in and expand on it to make it larger and easier to read. So they're taking the section, notice our starting and ending is between 5 and a 6. There are 10 sections in this first number line. And so this point here would be 5 and 7/10. And this point here would be 5 and 8/10. So now we're expanding it to really zoom in on the tiny little sections that would be located between the 5 and 7/10 and 5 and 8/10. Now, the cool thing is that we can now talk about this in terms of hundredths. And the reason for that is because I am now breaking this up into 10 more sections. And by doing so, I'm now making it hundredths. So instead of 5 and 7/10, I'm adding on that 0 to make it 5 and 70 hundredths. So this one here would be 5, and it's going to be hard for me to write, but 5 and 71 hundredths, and that would be 5 and 72 hundredths, and then 5 and 73 hundredths, and 5 and 74 hundredths, 5 and 76 hundredths, 73, 74, 75. Here's 76, and so on, all the way till we get to 5 and 80 hundredths. So section 6 sections means that the point is at 5 and 76 hundredths, right there where that dot is that I drew over. All right, now that we know what that zoom feature is, we can take a look at this example. Again, I am on page 637 of our math workbook. All right, first thing I need to do is check out my starting and ending. I have a 9 and an 11. Ooh, okay, so that means there's a 10 somewhere. Oh yeah, look at that. So I have a 9, a 10, I have an 11. All right, and between the 9 and 10, let me just count my leaps just to make sure I'm working with tenths here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good, that makes sense. 6. So what would point A be? It would be 9.6, right? Okay. 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so then there's another 10 leaps between the 10 and the 11. That makes sense because 10.5 would be right in between the 10 and the 11. All right. So here they're zooming in. Just want to make it clear. I'm going to switch my color. They're zooming in on this section right here, it looks like. So let's see, what would that be? Well, if that's 10 and that's 10.5, so this would be, C would be like 10.1, and then this guy would be 10.2, and then this guy would be 10.3, 10.4, 10.5. Okay, I know I'm on the right track. So right in between 10.2 and 10.3, they're zooming in on this section right there where my nail is, and then thus dividing that into tenths again. By doing so, we can now call it hundredths. So now we have 10.2, but instead of 10.2, we're going to say 10 and 20 hundredths. So this would be 10 and 21 hundredths, and 10 and 22 hundredths, and right there would be 10.23 and 10.24, and D would be 10 and 25 hundredths, 26 hundredths, 27 hundredths, 10 and 28 hundredths, 29, and then finally 10 and 30 hundredths. So we can answer all of these questions pretty easily now, but notice how much work I did before even looking at the questions. And that's something that's really going to be helpful. If you just go right to number 1 and be like, okay, where's 10 and 1/10? And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I can't find it. But now I know because I spent so much time really focusing on what my number line meant. So 10.1 or 10 and 1/10 is going to be right here where C is. Look, I already labeled it actually. How cool is that? So number 1 would be C. Let's take a look at number 2, 10 and 28 hundredths. All right, well, I know if it's dealing with hundredths, it has to be down below where I zoomed in. So let's see, 10.20. Oh, look, I already labeled it. So that would be E. And 10 and 25 hundredths, it's going to be below. Look, there it is. So that is my D. 9 and 6/10, well, we're dealing in tenths, so that must be up at the top somewhere. Ah, there it is. That was my A. And just plain old 10, right? 10 whole. There's nothing as a decimal, so it's just a 10 as a whole number, and that's going to be B right there. All right, super cool. So now that we know a little bit more about decimals on a number line, we're actually going to try to draw one. So this is going to be kind of like those guided drawing videos. I don't know if you've ever tried one. I actually just did one with my daughter the other day, and it was really, really fun. The guy in the video draws like a little by little, and the people at home just follow along. And in the end, your drawing actually looks pretty good. So we're going to try that. I'd like everyone to please go get a plain piece of paper if you have one, or even just a notebook piece of paper. Anything that you have will work for this. But it really is going to be pointless to just sit at home and watch it. I want you to do what I'm doing. So please go and get a piece of paper right now. Do you have one? I hope you have a piece of paper. All right, here we go. All right, first thing, and you can just use a pencil, or if you want to be fancy like me and all my colored markers, you can get some markers of your own as well. All right, we're going to start with black, and we're going to draw our own number line. So we first start by making a line, and then we're going to put 2 arrows at each end. And now we're going to make our starting and ending points. And I think I'm going to start with a 2 and end with a 3. Okay. Now I want to break up my number line into tenths. So the easiest way really to do this is to look and see what about half would look like. And this doesn't have to be perfect, trust me. And right about wherever you think half would be, I'm going to make a really dark line right there to show my half mark. Okay. And now if I was labeling this with fractions, this would be 2.5, right? All right. But I'm not doing fractions, so I'm going to hold off on that. I am now going to break this up into tenths, the whole thing. So that means that if I need 5 sections here and 5 sections here, I want to make 4 lines to divide this. So I want to do my best to make 4 lines. So I'm not going to worry too much. I'm just going to do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. It's not perfect, but it's actually not too bad. All right, I'm going to do the same thing here where I'm going to break it up by making 4 lines. 4 lines will give me 5 sections. So here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now I'm going to count my leaps. I want to just make sure that I did this right. And if you did it wrong, crumple up that paper, throw it out, and start all over, because we really want to make sure that we're doing this the right way. So here we go. Let's start at the 2. We're going to count our leaps. Hopefully I will have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yay, it works. All right. So I have just officially broken up my number line into tenths. I could label this with fractions if I wanted to. This one would be 2 and 1/10. This guy right here would be 2 and 2/10. Then I would have 2 and 3/10, 2 and 4/10. You should be labeling yours at home too. 2 and 5/10, which we know equals 2.5. 2 and 6/10, 2 and 7/10, 2 and 8/10, 2 and 9/10, and then the 3 would be 2 and 10/10, which would actually give us the whole number 3, because we have 1 plus 2 would be 3. Awesome. All right, but oh yeah, we're not doing fractions anymore. We're doing decimals. So we are going to have to now label this same number line, but now using decimals. Let's see, what color do I want to use? Let's do blue. Okay. So instead of 2 and 1/10 as a fraction, I am going to label this 2 and 1/10 as a decimal. So it would look like this: 2.1, 2.2, 2 and 3/10, 2 and 4/10, 2.5, 2 and 6/10, 2 and 7/10, 2 and 8/10, 2 and 9/10, and then this would be 3. All right, so excited. All right, so now I have my entire number line broken into tenths, But now here's where we want to zoom in on just a tiny little portion of our number line and make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change my color, and I think I want to do the section between 2 7/10 and 2 8/10. So I really want to take this section right here, and I want to zoom in on that. So I'm going to kind of highlight that with another color, and then I'm going to draw 2 lines kind of going out like that. Just make sure everyone can see. And now I'm going to draw a new number line. So here I go. I'm going to draw another number line, put some arrows at the end, and now my beginning and ending points are going to be that 2.7 and 2.8, or 2 7/10 and 2 8/10. Except now the cool thing is that I'm going to make 10 more sections in this zoomed in number line. And when I do that, I can now speak in terms of hundredths. And here's what that would look like. So I can just add a 0 on to both of these, now making them hundredths. So this is 2 70 hundredths. And now this is 2 80 hundredths. All right, and now I have to break up my number line. So again, I'm going to do that middle point, just a point that looks like it's in the middle. And then again, I'm going to make 4 lines here and 4 lines there. Let's just do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take a minute and try to do something similar. It's okay if it's not perfect. Now it's time to label. So if this is 2 70 hundredths, this guy right here would be 2 71 hundredths. And then we have 2 72 hundredths. And then 2 73 hundredths. And then 2 74 hundredths. And then 2 75 hundredths. 2 76 hundredths. 2 77 hundredths. 2 78 hundredths. And 2 79 hundredths. And then finally 2 80 hundredths. Cool, right? And we know that really this here, this number line, is just a representation of the space between right here. And because I have 10 more sections, I now can talk in terms of hundredths, because if each of these little spaces had 10 more sections, just like this guy, there would be 100 little spaces that ran the length of this new number line. All right, I know this is a little bit tricky and you might be like spinning right now, and that's totally okay because we're going to learn a lot more about number lines and decimals. So stay tuned for our next video. My kids want me to tell you to give me 2 thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone, and I will be back tomorrow with more awesome math.